رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. We are on the Day of Judgment topic. Now, the three fundamental pillars of Islam is three things: believe in Allah, believe in the Prophet, and believe in the Day of Judgment. So if you don't believe in the Day of Judgment, you cannot be in Islam. If you don't believe in the Prophets, then you cannot be a Muslim. Now, all the religion in the world are divided into two categories: the Abrahamic faith and the Dahramic faith. Now, the Abrahamic faith is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, in classic time Jewish, they would believe in the Day of Judgment. But of course, with evolution of Jewish theology, that's no longer the central of the belief. In the Quran, Allah uses logical argument about those who don't believe in the resurrection. This is because Quraysh, so when Islam came, Quraysh believed in Allah, but they did not believe in the Day of Judgment. So Quraysh believed in Allah, but did not believe in the Day of Judgment. And Allah uses logical arguments in the Quran to talk to these people who don't believe in the Day of Judgment. So for example, when the stage of the embryo is explained in the Quran, Allah tells mankind, think about your own origin. The one who created you the first time cannot create you again. And we talked about the stage of embryo last week. And on the Day of Judgment, the oppressed and the oppressor will have no barrier. So in this world, the oppressed and the oppressed gets away with it. The oppressor gets away with it, and the oppressed goes unjust. On the Day of Judgment, they will both have no barrier. Now, Friday is called Jum'ah because of the gathering. And Judgment Day also has names of the gathering. So all species such as animals, human, jinn will be gathered on that day. Now, Ubay ibn Khalaf came to the Prophet ﷺ and he had bones in his hand. And he was a kafir. So he told the Prophet, Ya Muhammad, do you think Allah will bring these bones after it decay? And he smashed the bones and threw it in his face. And Allah answered him in a powerful Surah Yasin. Allah says, this man who argues with us whether we can bring back the life and he challenged us, did he not forget his own creation? In other words, you're asking Allah for external proof when you are the internal proof. Your body is live and walking. Isn't that enough proof for you? The one who created you the first time cannot create you again. Go ahead with Surah Yasin, verse 76.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الْإِنسَانُ أَنَّا خَلَقْنَاهُ مِن نُطْفَةٍ فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ.
Does mankind see that we created him from a drop of fluid, and then he argues with us that we cannot recreate him again? Next verse.
وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ قَالَ مَن يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ.
He challenges God. He cannot resurrect him. And he does not look at his own creation. Who will give life after the bone has been decayed? Next verse.
قُلْ يُحْيِيهَا الَّذِي أَنشَأَهَا أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ خَلْقٍ عَلِيمٌ.
Say, O Prophet, tell this man, the one who created you the first time has perfect knowledge of every creation there is and can recreate you again. Does man not know at one point there was no such thing as human? At one point, nobody can imagine human exist. At one point, we have a timeline when we were created. At one point, jinn were created before us, didn't even know what human is. At one point, there was no such thing as human. It is a bigger miracle that you were created from nothing, and you say that Allah cannot bring you back. Now, when you die, when you're thrown, your bone becomes into dust, the only thing that remains is your strongest bone is the coccyx bone. That's the only thing that remains. And eventually, after hundreds of years, the coccyx bone will become into dust. So the only bone that will remain is the coccyx bone. The human body has 200 bones. It has 30 trillion microscope. It has 37 trillion cells, and it has 70% water. When you are buried, when you get decomposed, it's in 4 stages. The first stage, your fluid leaks out, which is the bacteria and the maggots begin to eat your flesh. The second one is your flesh converts into gas and accumulates into different color. That's why when a dead person is not put in the fridge for too long, his body color change. The third thing is few days. So if you leave the body, if you don't bury it, you just leave it on the soil and you just let it decay. A few days, it becomes budded and it releases the fluid, and the fluid is so rich in nitrogen that it kills any plant in the soil, and then years later it makes the soil fertilized. So the soil will be fertilized from the body after decomposed. After 100 years, now if your body is in a coffin, it takes longer to decompose. So if your body was on the soil, it decomposes after 2-3 days. If it's in the coffin, it can take up to a year for the fluid to explode. So if it's in the coffin, your body eventually will become into dust. Everything will become into dust except for your teeth. Your teeth can survive centuries, and some teeth can even survive tens of thousands of years, but even the teeth will become into dust. And Allah challenges them in the Quran, and He tells them, وَهُوَ الَّذِي يَبْدِي الْخَلَقِ ثُمَّ يَعِيدُ وَهُوَ أَهْوَنُ عَلَيْهِ. It is He who created it and then repeated, and it's easier for Him. So what is the term easier for Him when we know that Allah, when He creates something, it's kun fayakun. It means be and it is. When Allah creates something, it's effortless. It doesn't take any effort. Ibn Abbas responded to this, if there's any difficult, when you do it again, it's easier. But we know there's no difficult when Allah creates something. But Allah is speaking at their level. So the one who doesn't believe he'll be recreated, Allah speaking at his level, tell him, look, if it was any difficult of creating you the first time, it would be the first time, not the second time. So the second time would be easier for him. And Allah also tells us, exam around us. In the Quran, He tells us, look at the dead land, how Allah brings it back to life. Now, I never really personally understand this living in this country, because wintertime and summertime is always green in here. You know, I never really understood this. But if you ever visit the Arab Peninsula where, you know, it's greenish and out of nowhere it becomes dead, and you will swear that that land, there's no life to it and the life will not be again. And Allah tells us in the Quran, look at this land that's dead, has no plantation, it's a desert, and you swear that there will be no life, how Allah sends rain and the land will come back to life. You will come back to that life just like in that matter. So He will create you with effortless. Allah also tells us in the Quran, فَانظُرْ إِلَى آثَارِ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ كَيْفَ يَحْيِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا وَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِحِ الْمَوْتِ. Look at Allah's mercy, how Allah sends rain to the dead land and then He brings it back to life. Another moral argument that Allah mentioned for the people that don't believe in the Judgment Day, that this life is unfair. And if there's no Judgment Day, then there is no perfect justice. Allah tells us in the Quran, how can you deny Judgment Day when there is injustice in this world? When there's so many injustice in this world, how can you deny Judgment Day? أَفَنَجْعَلَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ كَالْمُجْرِمِينَ مَا لَكُمْ كَيْفَ تَحْكُمُونَ. Do you think we will make the believer and the criminal the same? The one who's righteous and the one who committed crime. The one who's righteous, he will go unrewarded. And the one who committed crime, he's going to go unpunished. What is the matter with you? How are you judging? That's what Allah is telling us. What is wrong with you? How are you judging? The criminal gets away with it, and the righteous, he goes unrewarded, and the criminal goes unpunished. The one who lived an honest life and a righteous life, and the one who dies as a criminal will go unrewarded, unpunished. The one who suffers and the one who causes the suffering gets away with it. That's not fair. That's not fair. How evil is your judgment? How evil are you to judge that there's no Judgment Day? Even if the person is killed for the crime that he did, for the thousands of people he killed, what is one death compared to 1,000? So even if the person is killed who killed 1,000, how is that going to bring any justice? Even if you kill him, that's not justice. An evil dictator that destroyed countries and get away with it. This world don't have any justice, and there must be a place of infinite justice. This world doesn't have justice. The politicians that destroys country, they're protected by the other politician. They protect them. And this world, there's no justice. So the infinite justice is on the Day of Judgment Day. Nietzsche, who was the first German philosopher, came out and claimed to be atheist. Because, atheism is modern time. Past 200 years, that's when atheism got popular. Before that, history, if you study history, they always believe in God. So when Nietzsche came, the German philosopher, people were saying we have killed the idea of God. Like, we killed God. So Nietzsche was saying, he's an atheist, he's saying, don't you realize by killing the idea of God, you have killed yourself? You have extinguished your own life existence. Now, in modern time right now, we are facing rise of depression, meaningless of life. People are living life not knowing what the meaning of life is. When you remove God from your life become meaningless. What's the point? Completely meaningless. When you believe in the Day of Judgment, it gives you the sense of optimism of the future better than the past.